Hello everybody, you're welcome back again to the Reggae Appreciation Society. On February 25th, the worldwide reggae community was struck with the sad news that the mercurial Peetah Anthony Morgan, lead singer of Morgan Heritage and one of the finest reggae vocalists of his generation, suddenly passed away at the age of 46. The loss of this incredible artist was a terrible blow to his colleagues and countless fans all over the world, but most especially the Morgan family that lost its patriarch, Denroy Morgan, almost exactly 2 years ago. In the reggae world today, it's popularly said that there are two reggae royal families, namely the Marleys and the Morgans. Just like the Tough Gong would create a musical dynasty of children and grandchildren, Denroy Morgan also did the same thing, with late Peetah as the arrowhead of that vision. And ever since their emergence on the world stage, Morgan Heritage have solidified their position as one of the biggest reggae acts on the planet. Their consistency, artistic brilliance, and versatility in channeling other genres into their sound made them extremely popular with new generations of reggae fans. It's worth noting that Morgan Heritage were part of the incredible wave of Rasta-oriented reggae artists nicknamed Rasta Revolution that made their debut in the mid-1990s and helped drag reggae back to its conscious roots. Other prominent members of that highly esteemed generation include the likes of Garnet Silk, Buju Banton, and Sizzla Kalonji. While this family group, as a collective, were a gifted bunch, Peetah was undoubtedly the engine room of Morgan Heritage, and losing him could very well mean the end of that group. Let's take a look at the life and times of Peetah Morgan, the story of the family band, and truly consider what is next for Morgan Heritage. Now this tale begins with the spiritual father of the band and the patriarch of the Morgan clan. Denroy Morgan was born in Jamaica in 1945 and was on the road to becoming among the pioneer breakout musical acts of the ska rocksteady era in the 1960s, like his peers Jimmy Cliff and the Wailers, when he would move to the US at the age of 20 in 1965 and settled in Brooklyn, New York. He would eventually form a band called the Black Eagles that became the first reggae band in New York. He also broke the glass ceiling of being the first reggae artist signed by RCA Records and scored a few massive hits at the start of the 1980s. But while he was scoring hits in the music charts, he was also scoring in the bedroom and would father 30 children in that period. As his kids were growing up, he began to recognize their inherent talent, and that made him decide to step back from pushing his own career and dedicated himself towards developing their musical aptitude. It was while living in Brooklyn in 1982 that he would assemble 8 of his children and form them into a reggae group that would eventually become Morgan Heritage. And he would develop their skills by making them work in his studio at weekends. The Morgan clan would move to Springfield, Massachusetts, where the Morgan kids would grow up and hone their craft over the years under the firm guidance of their dad. They slowly began to perform on stages around the city, but it was after more than 10 years of grinding that they would finally get their break after putting in 2 incredible performances at the Reggaeton Splash in 1993. That awesome performance backed them the first ever recording contract with major label MCA Records. By then, the previous lineup of 8 artists had now slimmed down to 5 in the persons of Peetah on lead vocals, Yuna, Roy aka Grams, Nakamaya, and Memolato Morgan. The band would release their debut album Miracles in 1994. A tight album that was a fusion of reggae, dancehall, and soul R&B. See, growing up in the US, particularly New York, the kids imbibed plenty of hip-hop, soul, and pop influences, which shined brightly in that first album. Interestingly though, the band would later disavow that album for being too poppy. But their second album, titled Protect Us Jah, came out in 1997 and featured the production genius of legendary dancehall producer Bobby Digital. And the sound on that project was heavily immersed in heavy spiritual and Rasta territory, with 12 wicked ital tracks featuring the exquisite vocals of Peetah Morgan. Apparently, the band had found their roots inspiration while in the Ivory Coast during a tour of Africa in 1995, and that experience would heavily show itself in this new work. It was that particular album that first brought the group Morgan Heritage to my attention around 1998. But it would be their sublime 1999 album, Don't Have It Dread, that made me go out and buy their CD after hearing the masterpiece lead single, also titled Don't Have It Dread, on the radio. A song that preached acceptance of all into the order of Rastafari, whether or not you had dreadlocks, were white, red, or yellow. They made it clear that being a Rasta was a spiritual affair, and all you needed was the divine conception of the heart. The impact of that song on my personal consciousness is deserving of a video of its own. And Peetah's sublime, fervent vocals and charming delivery is, in my humble opinion, among the greatest in reggae history. The album Don't Have You Dread, with 18 amazing songs, became a monster hit, but the band would score even bigger hits on the next 6 albums, not only smashing the charts commercially, but would build them a massive fan base in Africa, Asia, Europe, and America. And by the time their 2015 album Strictly Roots hit the streets, they were truly among the biggest reggae bands on the planet. That album not only went to number 1, but spent 44 weeks in the charts and bagged the Grammy for Best Reggae Album, beating heavy hitters like Barrington Levy, Jack Kerr, Luciano, and Rocky Dawuni. But unfortunately, after recording that album, Peetah Morgan was forced to leave the group to take care of health concerns. And not long after, Nakamaya would leave the band to pursue a solo career in 2018, leaving Morgan Heritage to continue as a trio composed of Peetah, Gramps, and Mr. Mojo. But this reduced lineup had no negative impact on the group's performance or sound, as they kept on touring the globe and putting in incredible performances that won them legions of new fans every single show. Each member would undertake solo projects, but always kept true to all the group's commitments over the years. Just like his father, Peetah Morgan was also pretty productive in the bedroom, with 11 children and 2 grandchildren that he had with his wife, Maria Morgan, and the relationship with Passion Minot, the daughter of reggae legend Sugar Minot, with whom he had 2 daughters. After recording astonishing success in the reggae world, Morgan Heritage released the album titled Homeland in April 2023, a body of work that the band described as world music, as it featured different genres and artists from all around the world. 2023 would end as an incredible year for the group. However, 2024 would usher in tragedy. In early February, Peetah, who had been living with diabetes for a while, suffered a massive stroke and had to be hospitalized. He was undergoing treatment and responding positively until his sudden demise on Sunday, the 25th of February 2024. His death sparked worldwide mourning and anguish, and an outpouring of tributes from reggae's biggest names, with the likes of Buju Banton, Freddie McGregor, Richie Spice, Tarrus Riley, and Ziggy Marley expressing their grief on social media. The passing of Peetah Morgan is not only a devastating blow to the family, but also a critical loss to Morgan Heritage itself. His stagecraft, charm, and amazing voice is simply unreplaceable and was the driving force of that outfit. Not taking anything away from Gramps and Mr. Mojo's immense talent, as those two are awesome musicians as well, but to be honest, it might have been easier to paper over the cracks when Morgan Heritage had 8 or even 5 members. But as it stands now, that group is now down to being a duo. It's my honest belief that there will be either of 2 outcomes. It's very possible that the loss of Peetah will spark something of a reunion and cause the former members to reassemble. And it's also possible that the grief might lead to a halt in Morgan Heritage as a project, though I sincerely pray that the former actually happens. It's hard to imagine the reggae scene without this amazing band, but even if they don't continue as a collective, we will always have the music and the memories of their previous magic, as well as the energy and the brilliance of the individual members of the great Morgan clan, no matter what. So there you have it. Thank you for watching the video today. Please leave a like, subscribe, and until next time, Jah bless.